last night I was listening to a video of a man just talking about how someone had contacted him through email who was pretty much, at a tipping point of ending things, and how he was able to help that young man. And it's not an uncommon thing at the moment. That's been going for some time, and I remember during all the lockdown periods of 2020 onwards, particularly where I lived, because as far as I know, it's the worst place in the world for the lockdowns, and really did a number on people's mental health. Really pushed people to the limits, and obviously beyond, to the point that they did end things. And it happened a lot, particularly with men. Not saying it didn't happen to women as well, but a lot of men's issues, as some of you may be aware, are not really looked at or addressed, and there's plenty of evidence of that. And this is not to create any kind of gender divide, although there's enough of that already. But it's to look at more about the issues that men face. And hearing that story about how that other YouTuber was talking about how he was able to help this other young man, it's not the first time I've come across this with such desperation within men. And in my own life too, I've experienced this with my younger years. I experienced very severe depression earlier on in my life, and anxiety and some other things too. So, and I've been through it too. Since then, I've really been through it in life, to a point where I've really broken a lot of people at a fraction of what I've gone through. So I have some experience of how to look at things and tackle things. And one of the ways I really look at this is, yes, we're living in this three-dimensional reality, this world we live in, the tangible, the physical. But it's about, for me, often looking above and beyond that, and looking at it from a more spiritual aspect too, to see what's really going on in that aspect. So, an analogy that's sort of used often is this idea of a mountain, and I can certainly relate to that it's as if most people are at the base of the mountain. That was including myself at one point. But as we seek to rise upward in terms of our consciousness, I'll come back to this more in detail. Just give an illustration here. As we go further up the mountain, we're able to go above the tree lines and see more. And then we can look out into this vast area and see other things into the distance. And we can say to the people below, hey, look what I can see. Look up here. Come up here and see the view. And even if you're telling them what you can see, they refuse to come up the mountain, and they just say, no, you don't know what you're talking about, even though they're at the bottom of the mountain and they can't see anything. So what I'm really getting at here with this analogy, and tying this back to the spiritual aspect, is although we do live in a three-dimensional world, and there's nothing wrong with the various aspects of this world to enjoy as much as we can, although it's seemingly becoming a lot harder in many ways, it's more about looking at the spiritual aspect, which is, in a sense, I think, is, well, it's not really what I think, it's just how it is. It certainly is the greater aspect of our lives, but also how we can get through these challenging times of this material world, this physical world. So the way we really do that is that we do that starting with ourselves. We can't really control how other people are. We can't control how the world is. To some degree we can do something, but ultimately it comes down to ourselves, how we conduct ourselves, what we can do to better ourselves, how we become more virtuous. And I always talk about this in terms of men, but I mean this is men and women, but I really want to look at more of this, talking to men in this regard. Because lately I've been listening to a lot of topics too, well, many topics, many on the topics between men and women, and the frustrations of men with women. And I'm not saying that women don't have their own, but I think most men who'd be perhaps finding this video would understand about there's something's really happened here with women in many ways. They become, well, there become a lot of things that, let's just say, aren't very particularly appealing to men. And now, some women might get their, who are watching this might get their back up about that, saying, well, I'm not here to be a certain way for men, and that's fine. But if for the women who actually want to date and start a family with men, well, you should really listen to what men are saying, because if you're conducting yourself in a certain way that's not appealing to men, then men aren't going to be, they're not going to be interested. But anyway, I'm not trying to get into that aspect right now. So coming back to the spiritual aspect of this too, and there may be some Christian people who are watching this. I myself see myself as a spiritual person, and a lot of people think I'm Christian because of the way I talk and how I conduct myself. But I certainly would never call myself a Christian, and because of the dogmatic approach and also what I see how churches conduct themselves, I wouldn't want to be associated with any of that terminology. However, what I have discovered over the years, particularly through delving really into the practice of, we may want to call it Christian mysticism, but I just call it mysticism in this regard. And mysticism meaning to seek union with God, union with the divine mind, with the Christ mind, also the Krishna mind. I know some people might not like to hear that as Christians, Krishna. It's actually, although the name is different, it's actually referring to the same thing. And if we want to, I'm not going to too into the Bible here, the New Testament, but there is a I think it was St. Paul said, "Let the mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus," or in Christ. So really what we're talking about here is a state of conscious awareness that we can seek towards. And although the name is different, Krishna consciousness and Christ consciousness are actually the same thing. In fact, there's actually a terminology, I think it's spelled Krishna. So it's Christ with na, the Krishna blended together because of that understanding that they are talking about the same thing. So the reason I talk about this too, although I'm a bit all over the place with where I'm probably going, it may sound like rambling, but hopefully there's something you'll get out of this. That the important aspect of our lives is to have this spiritual practice, to find this peace, to find this joy. That doesn't mean we don't have some suffering in our lives, doesn't mean there isn't some pain still. However, I have found this to be absolutely true. Many years ago I was studying into metaphysics very deeply. I was actually doing that as a degree, from a spiritual science point of view. And just a side note on that too, spiritual science, science is repeatable. And it is repeatable, which is kind of, well, it actually is, not kind of, it actually is. Yoga is also a spiritual science, that it's repeatable. If you do this, that, and the other, you'll get results. You'll get certain results. And yoga and mysticism are kind of similar in a way. Now, what I'm trying to get at here is that I do know too, all the good hearts out there, even Christian people I've listened to, and they are devout in a way. But I've noticed for many years the limitations too in the way people approach, we'll call it spirituality or God or Christianity, whatever you want to call it stage. What I'm trying to get at here is a deeper essence of the experience of God. That's a lot of time just putting your hands together like this and praying is actually limiting. It's actually quite limiting to you. There's a much deeper way to get into this higher aspect of mind, to relate, or not to relate, but to connect in with God on a deeper level. And this does relate to the mountain aspect, because what we're talking about here is states of consciousness. Now, I think that what we're seeing with all the promiscuity, particularly with, well, both men and women, but particularly with women, it's really gotten out of control. And obviously that's not particularly appealing to a man for lots of reasons, particularly wanting to start a family. And there's lots of reasons. There's plenty of videos that talk about that in different ways. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that, and we can tie this to the chakra system, is that those wheels of energy that are in our body are states of consciousness. So the lower one being the root at the very base of the spine, most people never ascend above that. They're in that lower state of consciousness their entire lives. Okay, and we can see that too, that the lustful energy, it's not a pure energy, it's a very lustful energy. That's related down to that lower aspect of consciousness. So as we raise above that and we move our consciousness upwards through these different centers, and we can do that in different ways. Maybe I won't get all of that right this moment, it's not really the point. But to understand that most of the world is living in that lower aspect, because most people aren't really getting closer to God. They're not getting deeper into communion with God and into this greater aspect of mind. And one of the ways we can do that very easily, it's not the only place that speaks about it, but I know a lot of Christians will be watching, that it's as Jesus said, or as it's written that Jesus said, that each day what we should do is surrender our will to God. So not my will, but thy will be done. Your will, not mine. I release and surrender my personal will to your will. And really embody that and embrace that with our heart. That we say, oh, this is really what I want. I want this to live through me, to get out of this lower aspect of my mind, to get out of this junk way of thinking and being. Now, it's not all going to just magically happen overnight. It's a practice and something we should really seek throughout the day. But if we're all doing that more, this is both men and women in this case, it really is. It's all people. We tune ourselves to the mind of God. And honestly, if we want the world to be a better place, it starts with each and every one of us, male or female, it doesn't matter. So it's something we could all be doing, getting out of this ego consciousness. That's an interesting topic too. Some people say you need the ego. I don't actually think you do, because I see the ego as a state of consciousness, and it's the lowest state of consciousness, because if you think about any time you have trouble in your life with people, it's either your ego or their ego getting upset, or both. It's the lower aspect of mind. But if you notice people who are, let's say, we might regard as quite peaceful and quite spiritual in some way, quite humble, so I'm not none of these big showboating sort of people. That's very egoic in itself too. But you'll see that. Sorry, I lost my trail of thought there. Just about, yeah. Sorry, no, I was just talking about the ego. So that's right. I was just sort of talking about how some people think we need it, and some people think we don't. So I don't think we do it. I think it's a state of consciousness, and that as we do this practice of surrendering our ego up to this high mind, to let the mind of God flow through us, the Christ mind flow through us, that we align and tune our mind to a Christ way of thinking and being, will transform from within. Now, coming back to this aspect of desperation in life, where people feel like they want to end their life, that's also can be quite an egoic thing too. And from the lower aspect of mind, in the lower aspect of thinking and thoughts, and the overwhelmed feeling. Now again, this is not to say there isn't still a feeling, maybe sometimes people feel that, but I can certainly speak from personal experience, as I mentioned before, from depression in my own life in the past, which I don't suffer with now, and it was very bad, and anxiety, all sorts of things. And I know this to be true through my experiences, because life got very hard for a number of years. I mean, crazily hard. And I didn't have anybody really who had my back. And I was really pushed through things mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But it was through my practice, my daily practice with surrendering my personal will to God and seeking that I had a sense of joy, even in the pain and the suffering, even in the heartache, even in the the heartache of people doing wrong by me, or cheating on me, or mistreating me, whatever it may be, and it happened in many different ways, and really feeling like I was being forgotten by God in some ways. And there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of I don't know why things are like this. I don't get it. But I also knew that how important it was for me to keep that focus spiritually, looking within, because that's what really gave me, as it's written, the peace that passes all understanding. There was still always a sense of peace. There was never a sense of like, okay, I've got to end everything now. It was always like, there was a sense of frustration sometimes. But all of that too, as I look back now, I didn't see it at the time, but in retrospect, I can see all these challenges were helping to do a number of things. They're helping to heal me in different ways, in a very fast track kind of way. And just to work out all of these little things still within me that needed to come out. And so it was helpful, although I couldn't see it at the time. Now, this is not to diminish still how people feel at all. Because as I said, you can still have a lot of suffering even on the spiritual path. Sometimes that's a part of it. But what I'm trying to get at here is that there is another aspect to going through life, even feeling those things, but there's something that keeps us at bay in some ways, to not go to extremities and not trying to write ourselves off. However, again, that's even with well, sometimes people just turn to alcohol and drugs. That's pretty common, and it's an interesting thing because in the Bhagavad Gita, which is sort of like the Hindu New Testament in a sense, gospel, it says, even the mind that knows the path can stray from the path because the senses are so unruly, but the seer recollects their minds and focuses it back up on me. I call them a seer, I call them illumined. So what I really like about that line is that even if we are seeking to have this greater union with God and live that way in our lives, we can still get off track. Totally. Oh, I've done it many times. And the times I have, I just shake my head and think, oh, I've done it again. I've gone totally off track. But it's just about coming back to it. And that's the point of that second part, that we recollect our mind and refocus it back upon me, meaning God. Because this life's very fleeting, and a lot of the times, well, most of the time in people's lives, we have all these desires. Not wrong. They're not wrong. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have a family or be in a relationship with a loving woman. There's nothing wrong with these things. In fact, I think it's pretty natural and pretty healthy. However, this weird time we're in right now, it's all over the place. It's all there's lots of reasons why it's the way it is. But these aren't very settled times. These are very unusual times in many ways. And it can be very discouraging to think, well, what am I supposed to do with my life? I would like this and this and that. And again, nothing wrong with these things. I often feel the same about things. I would like this and that, but I try to look at it more as it'd be a nice thing to have, but not necessarily my existence. Okay, if things don't work out a certain way, so well, that's I'm a little disappointed. I suppose that would have been nice, but at the same time, to realize that the external things themselves, it's like, well, they're really going to ultimately bring you fulfillment, because even if you get the thing you say you want, eventually you can't hold on to it. It's going to go. Even if you have the love of your life, well, that person may pass. Well, they will eventually. They may pass before you pass on, naturally. And so you may be in the same place anyway. But you might think, well, I still had the chance to experience it, and that's true. However, sometimes when we're in these places we are now, where we desire to have something and we can't have it, we'll ask ourselves, how can I come to a sense of peace by not having this thing? It's not to deny that you want it, but how can you sort of put things in a place and say, what is it that's really eating at me about this? not having it. And it's finding a way to work on those things, because it's going to be different for everyone. There'll be some similarities for sure, but it's coming trying to understand ourselves so that we don't lose the balance within inside ourselves. And a part of that too is we can keep on turning these things over to God too. Keep on doing it, you keep on doing it, and keep on doing it. For instance, you can just surrender and release it to God. I surrender and release this desire to you. You know, some I've heard some Swamis talk about this. Swami Kriyananda being one of my favorites. And he says every night he creates mentally a bonfire in his mind to throw all of his desires into. And you know, some of you might not like the idea of that. I like my desires, but they do often keep us bound in a sense of suffering. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with them. It's more about like, well, it'd be lovely if that came along, but not being attached to anything in that sense. And that's a sort of Buddhist aspect too, about non-attachment. And I've experienced that. Gone through so much in life where you just so much loss in so many ways. And you know, it's actually interesting because I'm grateful for these experiences. Not at the time always, but you see how much you've grown as time goes on when you come along similar things, and you just think, oh, okay, I just feel pretty unmoved by it. And I think that's an important part in life, is to find a way to become unmoved, because a lot of the time we do become overwhelmed in life for lots of reasons, and a lot of times it's our thoughts doing that to us, really, ultimately telling us we need this and that. And I'm not talking about basic needs and necessities. Look, I've been homeless many times. I can't remember, I've lost account. And one thing I've always been happy about is I've had food and shelter, and I found the joy in the day, wherever I am. And I've been pretty fortunate though. I always at least still had my 4-wheel drive, my car, although as challenging as that was. Yeah, that's another story, gosh. But look, it's about not really getting too caught up in these worldly things. Again, it's nothing wrong with these things. It's a problem when we are affected deeply because we can't fulfill them. You know, the idea, the pressures of, oh, I need to get a house and this. What if you just let that go? What if you let everything go? All the ideas of everything, just let it all go. Think, well, you might be able to just let all that pressure off you, and realize that, as the great masters of the East often say, that if you want to be given everything, give everything up. Again, it's not to say it's wrong to have anything, or, I mean, you still need food and shelter. So, but they're necessities. But the idea of things, the concept of things, and this comes back to this state of consciousness. The more we raise our consciousness, we'll find that the things we thought we wanted, we don't really want anymore. We start to find that we don't really care so much about money, because we start to realize how it's not really, there's a place for it, for sure. Don't get me wrong. If you know, won $1 million or something, well, I'd use it, you know, in a constructive way. But I don't really seek it. I mean, if I really wanted to go and get it, any of it's good. If any of us really want $1 million, there's ways to do it. It's sure there's a lot of hard work involved in doing these things. I personally don't see the point of it, so that's why I've not really done that. I don't have the skills or the intelligence, and I certainly have the drive, but I just know that at the end of that, it's like, well, now what? It's like, well, I was feeling fine before, and what's the point of putting myself through all that stress to get it? But I do know the big one for men is about having a woman in their life to complement their lives and share with. And this actually, I wasn't sure I was going to bring it up in this video, but some of you may be aware of a man named Aleister Crowley, and there was another man associated with him called Jack Parsons. And they're very black magic, satanic type, dark stuff from it. What happened in, I think it was the 60s, maybe, I can't remember the exact year, maybe it was early 70s, 60s, around that time. Before he died, Jack Parsons did a very big, intense ritual to bring on the whore of Babylon. And from what I can tell, it certainly looks like he's achieved that. Because if we look at the current state of what we have in the world now, and how people are conducting themselves and acting, and how particularly what's happened with women, with this promiscuity, this, oh well, it's a lot of different things, and I'm not saying it's all women. It's not. But again, mind you, the women I've generally met who aren't like that are on a higher way of thinking, a higher level of conscious awareness. And just because you go to church doesn't mean anything. In fact, I often tell people, don't look, if you want to commune with people, a similar thing, great. But I actually don't think churches are very healthy for people generally, most of the time. They're very dogmatic, and they hold people back in truly coming to this higher relationship with God. And I highly recommend people look into the path of mysticism, in Christian mysticism. But the thing is, as I was saying before, this, the holding the hands together like this and just praying, it's not that effective a lot of the time. The deeper language or connection with God is actually through emotion. So there's different ways to do this, and meditation, if done a certain way, is really the highest form of prayer. You may use words. Sometimes I do towards the end of a certain practice, but it's really about focusing in upon God's presence within. And maybe I could put some links too. There's some really great Christian mystics. I found a playlist actually fantastic to listen to when you're just laying there. But I can tell you from experience, because I experience it every single day, is that there's different ways to do this. I like to do this sometimes sitting up, sometimes a lot of the time laying down. But if you're going to lay down flat, make sure you can do it and not fall asleep. Otherwise you're sort of not getting anywhere. The reason I lay down sometimes, or often to meditate, is because it fully allows me to really relax every part of my body, fully relax. So the idea is that through the full relaxation of the body, and then getting the breathing just sort of slower, just in your own times, no rush or anything like this, and is to really relax the body. Okay. But then the feel, and I do this sometimes. I put both my hands on my heart, and I'm laying there, and I just start to feel love within me. Just try and feel the emotion of love starting in my heart and radiating through my body. And if you have the capacity to do so, you can just see your whole body filled with light. Just as though you're just solid white light. We can kind of do this. I'm only telling you a couple of things here. There's many different things I do, but anyway, the point of this is. Oh, another thing you can do too. This is actually good too if you are, say, feeling quite anxious and depressed as well. And even if you're not, still good to do. One of the other practices you can do as a part of this too, if you are just laying there with your hands over your heart, as you're breathing in, very slowly, it's best if you can breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. And usually when you're doing it, you may need to breathe out through your mouth until you just come to a slower, just a more relaxed, just relaxing the body. We're just trying to slow everything down, because the more we slow down the breathing, because the lungs really control the whole body. It's not the heart. A lot of people think, oh, it's the heart, but if you think about it, if you go running, as soon as you start breathing more, the heart starts speeding up. If you slow the breathing down, the heart slows down. So it's the lungs that really, the breath that has total control of the body. So we need to get that under control first to relax ourselves completely. And once we do that, you can either visualize this or just think about it. Singing, first breath is breathing through your nose. As you're breathing, you think, I'm breathing in peace. This peacefulness and peace is coming in, and imagine peace going through every cell of your body, just through the nucleus of every cell of your body, all through, down to your legs, to your feet and everything. And then as you're breathing into that peace, just hold it for a moment. And initially you can, let it out through the mouth and release all that's non-peaceful. And then every breath after that, just you're breathing in the peace, holding it, but then think, I'm radiating peace all through myself and outwardly. And you can do that for as long as you like, really. And then, you might move to joy, breathing in joy. And think about it too. Think about what it would feel like to be joyful. Like your body be elevated, you'd be feeling good, and just think about how joy would feel in the body. It's a practice. It might be unusual at first. You think about love, the breathing in love, and you can exhale all that's not loving, and then again just breathing in love and radiating love, and then positivism, breathing in all this positivism about myself, my body, my life, releasing all that isn't, and then just keep on breathing in it and radiating that outwardly. And I can tell you that you'll certainly notice the difference through doing this. You'll come to a very peaceful state the longer you do this. But after you've done that for a time, if you wanted to, you keep your hands there. I can't do it for too long. I think I've got some sort of thing in my muscle here, so my hand goes a bit numb, so I can't do it for too long when I'm laying down. But it's true, as I think it's Matthew 6:22. Even Jesus, well, it says Jesus said this, that, and the only reason I say that, I shouldn't get in the whole topic of it now, but I'll come back to it another time. But anyway, what it says in the New Testament that Jesus said in Matthew 6:22, that he talks about, if thine eye be single, the whole body shall be filled with light. So it's our spiritual eye, and I know a lot of time Christians are afraid of this idea, but there is a lot of very deep Eastern things inside the Bible practices to help us get into this higher state of mind. So we do focus on in the center of our minds. I mean, some people say behind the eyebrows. You can sense it, and you'll feel it too. If you do it long enough, you'll feel an energy there. I find it's even better if you can bring it inward to like the center of your head, which I always find really interesting too, that we call this temples, the temple within. So if you're focusing between the temples, I find that very interesting to call them temples to begin with. But that's the temple within. And if we focus there, and we just sit there in silence, a bit like I think it's a psalm. It says, "Peace be still, and know that I am God." And that's it. We relax the body, we're being peaceful, and because we've slowed the breathing down and the body down, it allows the thoughts to, to be a little bit more controllable. Your mind's going to still wander off a bit, but the idea is to think about Christ. You can even just keep on saying the word Christ over again if you like, or something along those lines, or, my mind is one with Christ over and over again. You can say it in your head if you want to, but keep yourself focused in there. And it's very interesting what can happen over time. It's a practice. I've had some really profound experiences with this, but the one thing I know is that I surrender my will to God, and you can do this too. You can do this towards the end of what you feel like is the end of the meditation or prayer. It's the highest form of prayer. You can just affirm it, that I affirm and declare that I surrender my personal will to God. You may want to do the Lord's Prayer too, just before you open your eyes, and just lay there for a moment too, once you do open your eyes, just have a little peaceful moment. But the more you do this, you will absolutely feel God's presence. There's no doubt about it. So you keep at it. Maybe you may not initially. It may take some time. I don't know. It's hard to say. Every person's different. And also throughout our days, we keep ourselves focused more on God. So think about God as much as you can through the day, and dedicate everything you do to God, and do your best to align your minds that everything you do is God working through you. God is working with you in every way. And this is truly a path of mysticism, to align our mind as much as possible with the consciousness and awareness of God as much as we can. And this will certainly be very transformative. And again, men and women can do this. But I certainly do know the struggles that men have, because I've had them too, and in many different ways. And it is a very strange time we're going through right now, and it's obviously meant to be this way for whatever reason. But I see this as a spiritual, we'll call it a spiritual war. It is a spiritual war that is going on. And to keep that in mind, that this is what's going on, and to keep ourselves true, to keep ourselves close to God, and to keep our minds as much as we can out of the junk of the world. Now, as I was saying, that it's new to me to be looking back at all the things of the world again. Not that I'm afraid to look at them, but nothing's really changed. It's always the same. It's gotten worse. I'll come back and peek every so often and think, oh, okay, it's all kind of gotten worse again. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the ability to detach and just look at things quite objectively. They get very drawn in, and if you're one of those people, you might want to really limit yourself to the exposure of things that you notice aggravate you, upset you, because we don't want to become upsettable, and we are upsettable. We need to work out why that is, and it's even what Jesus was talking about when he says this line that some people take to the extreme. But he was making a valid point, and an extreme, and he was using these words to make the extremity of the point. That if something causes you sin, cut off your hand, and poke out your eye. The point is not to do those things literally. The point is to be drastic. If, for instance, if you're caught up with pornography, do something drastic. You just got to cut it off, man. Like not your hand and not your penis. It's not what it meant, but it's you'll have to find a way to do something with the energy. Like, I don't want this, and just really drive it forward. This is holding me back in my spiritual life. I don't want this. I don't want this in my life. Whatever it is, it could be anything. And again, sin's a really interesting word, because that's a topic in itself. But one way of looking at sin, rather than feeling all down about it and things like that, I think one way to look at it is that anything you do that diminishes your spiritual perhaps connection with God in some way. It's not that you're ever broken off from it. It's not. But you'll know within inside your own soul, your own being, how you feel when you perhaps do certain things, whatever they may be. It sort of pulls us back a bit in a sense. It doesn't mean that we're cut off. It just means we do things that gets us more into that egoic mind, not the higher mind, not the Christ mind, the union with God. So I really do encourage everybody to live their lives more this way, especially in these times, to spend time every day, even if it's only 10 minutes, to going into a state of this type of meditation I'm talking about, and focusing on God, focusing on Christ within, and thinking about Christ inside yourself, which is there. I know this is not generally what you're taught in Christianity, but it's true, and it's all through the New Testament. And this is really why I brought this up too, because what I was saying is this whole just hands together, and that it's the emotions, it's the true. Like, do you remember when Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul"? It's the feeling. That's it. It's the point. It's focusing on God and making that connection. Meeting God halfway, not just empty words. Again, Jesus said something along the lines of, I can't remember now, something like, they worship me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. It's about the heart, and I have a lot to say about that in different ways, but that's not for now. So I do encourage that with you, and to not lose heart. I know this world can be very, very discouraging in many ways, very disappointing. Look, I've said that many times. I say it with a sense of humor too. It's like, very disappointing. It is disappointing, because again, it comes down to desires, liking things to be a certain way, and they're not. So, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I've had some relationships, and it has been heartbreaking in some ways, because I've been disrespected and cheated on, and I've had some shockers over time. But I haven't lost heart. I know there are good women out there. There are. That's wonderful. Actually, that's a good thing to do. I saw recently, it was really lovely actually. It was a series of videos of women who actually were wife material, and it was so lovely to see. It exists out there, and I think that look, I don't know the answer how everything's going to pan out in our lives, each and every one of us individually. I don't, but I think that we shouldn't lower ourselves. And that's the other thing too. I know a lot of guys just go out there and say, "I'm just going to go have sex with a lot of women and stuff like that because that's all women want. That's what I get that. I'm not making a judgment on you. That's what you feel you need to do. Go for it. I personally don't feel that at all. I don't feel that's the way to go. Because I see it as quite a sacred thing, having sex, and I think that it's really important to have some sort of bond with the person, and that's generally what the point of it is, I think. And so this promiscuity, both men and women, I find it very distasteful, actually, personally. But again, I'm not saying you're a good or bad person. I just don't think that's the way. I don't think it's healthy for men or women. It's I think about the beauty of relationships and how wonderful it is to grow a life with somebody. And there's one thing I've noticed too when I've heard a lot of women speaking recently about what they want in a man. I never hear anything loving. It's a whole checklist of things, which is like, well, basically it means that the guy could be any character or any personality as long as he's got this checklist of things. That'll do. So I find that really gross, actually, really, and quite well, it's kind of sad, actually, isn't it? That where's the love? I mean, I know I've generally found, speaking to men, that most men have a really great, beautiful vision of love and romance, actually, and I don't find it that often in women. I really don't. And I'm not saying it doesn't exist in women. I'm just telling from my personal experience. And the more I listen to women, they say, I want a man with these things. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. But what about the idea of him growing a life together? Even a man doesn't have all those things. It's like you're growing a life together, one of fun and joy, and sharing life. It's ups and it's downs, and that's it. And adding something to each other's lives. The world can be a very hard place, and I've thought about that too in terms of my own relationships that I've had in the past, thinking, gosh, I was really offering these people the world in many ways, and they didn't see it for whatever reason. I think whatever reason, I know some of them money driven, but and it's like, well, there's life far more than those things, and it's better to have someone who's got your back, no matter what, whether you got very little, and have someone who's there who can support you, and that's far more important. I personally don't actually need that. I don't need actually anybody else to give that to me. I can do that myself. But so to me, it's really about sharing life. So, well, let's have some fun. Enjoy life. I'm happy to be there for someone else's support if they need it. And I generally do that in my life, and I enjoy that. If I can be a light in someone's world in some way, and we can do that too. And that's another thing too, that often we get caught up in our own stuff, and understandably, but to remember too that sometimes we can alleviate the suffering of our own lives by alleviating the suffering of others in some way. And of course, we're not always feeling in a place to do that, but it's not always a massive gesture. It can be a simple thing, just a compliment to somebody that lifts their day, even if we're feeling terrible, perhaps, or we're feeling down. Just a comment on someone, at the, I don't see a cashier, and just comment, oh, that's a lovely bracelet you have on, or something like that, and it can really lift someone's day. Do it with a sense of obviously sincerity, and but this can really help us too. And anyway, I'm going to leave this here, and hopefully you get something out of this video that's going to be of some use to you. And I'll likely make more videos. I haven't made anything for a long time, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to really talk about. So it's been somewhat a bit of a rambling, but hopefully it gives you some comfort in some way. And I look forward to sharing more. And if there's anything you want to specifically ask me, well, please do so, and I'll do my best to answer that in some way. So anyway, I'm wishing you all a really, really wonderful day, and wish you all, a great sense of joy in your hearts, and may you all be blessed for your highest good. All right, have a great day. Bye.